Leon stood alone at the bus stop. The distant lights and sounds of the more crowded part of the city reminded him that there were other people around. Yet he couldn't shake the eerie feeling of isolation that plagued him. Coming from Hong Kong, Leon was used to the noisiness of his old neighborhood. Looking for a new experience, he packed up all of his possessions and moved to a quieter area of Beijing. At the time, he thought that a change in environment would be nice, but though he would never admit it, he was beginning to regret his decision. As the unnerving loneliness grew more suffocating, Leon reached into his backpack to find something to distract himself. When he looked up with his iPod in hand, he was startled to see that he was no longer alone. An old man sporting a red mandarin jacket and a dark ponytail appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Leon nodded politely before putting on his headphones. The two men stood in silence until bus 302 arrived. The old man took a seat up front, a few rows down from the driver. The rest of the bus was deserted, so Leon sat down in the far back. They started moving, and Leon became immersed in his music. He barely noticed the bus stop once more to let on 2 additional men. They sat down directly behind the driver's seat. After a few more minutes of staring out the window, Leon felt a rough hand on his shoulder. He turned to see the old man angrily glaring at him. He took off his headphones and gave the man a questioning look. "Give it back," the old man hissed. "Excuse me?" Leon replied, completely confused. "My wallet," the man answered furiously. "No, you stole it. Now give it back." "Are you insane?" Leon was getting upset. "I didn't do anything of the sort." "Stop lying," the old man was shouting now. "Give it back right now or I'm calling the police." He reached forward and boxed Leon's ears. Leon yelled out and smacked away the man's hands. The bus came to an abrupt stop. "Both of you get out. Now!" The bus driver shouted, "There's no fighting on my bus." He opened the door and gestured for them to leave. Leon grumbled as he grabbed his things and stomped out of the bus. Once the men were back on the street, the bus driver drove away in a huff. Leon turned to glare at the old man, but was surprised to see him looking oddly relieved. "I'm sorry for what I did to you on the bus," the old man said with a smile, "but it'll just save both of our lives." "What are you talking about?" Leon asked. "Those 2 men who got on, did you get a good look at them?" the man asked. No, he admitted. "Well, if you had, you would have seen that they were missing their legs," the man exclaimed wildly. "Those men were ghosts." Leon had never been the type to believe in the supernatural, and right now he was feeling very annoyed about having to walk all the way home in the middle of the night. He was about to express this annoyance very vigorously until he noticed the man's triumphant grin. He truly believed that he had saved their lives, and Leon couldn't crush a senile old man's feelings. So, with a heavy sigh, Leon thanked the man and began heading back to his apartment. A couple of weeks later, Leon was sitting at his kitchen table eating breakfast and watching the morning news. He gasped when he saw an image of the bus flash on screen. 2 weeks ago, bus 302 had disappeared shortly after midnight, the newscaster reported. All traces of it, its driver, and any passengers that may have been aboard were nowhere to be found. Until today, when investigators found the vehicle parked in a ditch 3 miles north of its normal route. Leon stared at the screen as a team of medics loaded a full body bag into an ambulance. A swarm of police officers were taping around the area. The bus itself looked completely normal, albeit slightly daunting. The driver was found in his seat in an extended state of decomposition, though there appeared to be no sign of a struggle or an apparent cause of death. The bus also appeared to be in perfect shape, until investigators discovered that its petrol tank had been filled with blood. Leon felt sick. He thought back to that night when he had been so unsuspecting and so very close to ending up like the bus driver. He silently thanked the old man, this time with complete sincerity, for saving him from the fate of the midnight bus. "This happened to me when I was 17. I went to the gym 3 to 4 times per week and took the bus home. It was a Sunday and I'd just missed my bus, so I'd have to wait even longer for another. I would have called my parents, but they were out of the house for the evening and cabs were more expensive. So I chose to wait for the bus in the bus shelter. It was a frigid night, and snow had just started to fall. My bus was taking longer than usual, so I pulled out my phone and listened to music. It had been almost an hour. It was chilly outside, and I hadn't seen anyone. That was until I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye. It was a frightening man clothed in thick layers of clothing, cautiously approaching me. I knew that gazing at him would attract additional attention, so I concentrated on my phone. He sat at the far end of the shelter and simply stared at me. Something seemed strange about him. He appeared to be either drunk or high. "When is the bus due?" he inquired. "I think it's delayed because of the snow," I remarked, pulling out my earbuds. He glanced at me for a moment before grumbling to himself. I pretended to be on my phone since he was starting to weird me out. I took another look after a few minutes. He'd gotten closer. I averted my gaze for a few seconds before hearing the sound of him sliding closer. "You okay there?" I asked, turning to face him. He raised his arm and leaned towards me, his eyes gleaming. As he collapsed to the ground, I grabbed my stuff and went. I ran along the road, trying not to glance back. I kept walking till I arrived at the next bus station. I looked around to see if he was still there. He wasn't, so I went to sit down. I laid my head against the back of the glass, relieved, and waited for the bus. I was startled to find the same guy peering at me through the glass. "What the hell is wrong with you?" He then began strolling around the shelter towards me. "I'm going to warn you. Remain. Back." As I was backing up, I yelled in panic. I wanted to leave, but I had left my bag at the shelter and couldn't leave without it. The man suddenly leaped at me and I fled out of the way. He landed on his face first. I halted in amazement as I spotted blood streaming from his face. I attempted to elicit a response from him, but nothing worked. I summoned the police and paramedics, who arrived shortly thereafter. When I told them what had happened, they told me the man was on prescription medicine. In his wallet, he spotted a photograph of himself and his son. We assumed that because the child resembled me, he mistook me for him. I subsequently discovered that he had gone nuts after losing custody of his son in a legal battle. I never saw him again after he was taken away for treatment. I quickly obtained my driver's license and have never traveled a bus since.